So we'll be looking at research in perspective. I want us to talk about a little bit about research design, and this is going to be a short one. When we say research, what is research? There are a number of definitions. There are schools of thought that have different understanding of what research is. Now, research is seen as a scientific process. Another school of thought sees it as a systematic process, yet others also see it as a kind of methods or sequence of processes that you go through in order to discover or unearth knowledge or justify an existing knowledge. And that's how research is seen to be. Now, if you look at these definitions, you can appreciate the fact that these boxes are throwing some sort of a perspective when we come to research. So for instance, the first one, that is my far top left, says research is a scientific and a systematic search for pertinent information on a specific topic. Keywords: systematic, scientific. They are searching for pertinent information. It means that there are some information but that might not be pertinent. But does that mean that if the information is not relevant, that is also not research? That is also another thing that we can talk about a different day. Now, if you look at Clifford Woody, he describes it as defining and redefining problems, formulating hypotheses or suggested solutions, collecting, organizing, and evaluating data, making deductions and reaching conclusions, and at last, carefully testing the conclusions to determine whether they fit the formulated hypothesis. So if you look at this definition, and even the earlier one, this type of research is kind of skewed to more quantitative studies when we kind of use some sort of scientific means of discovering knowledge. And to the extent that Clifford Woody says that, I mean, you are defining and redefining problems, you are doing hypotheses, you are doing data collection, evaluating, doing deduction and all that. These are all scientific bases of what research. But when we say scientific basis, we are skewed more to the quantitative aspect of it, right? And then the third one says that it is a systematic approach. Take note of these words: systematic approach concerning generalization and formulation of a theory is also what research. Now, this third one combines the quantitative and the qualitative aspect of research. Now, look at this. It says that the systematic approach concerning the generalization, that is a quantitative research because we use sample to generalize what the entire population. That's why those who are doing the population census, they could take something and say the Ghana's population is estimated, is an estimate. It is not the actual. When you're doing research and we are doing a quantitative research, we are supposed to pick a sample to represent the population. So you can generalize the information. And then it's the second leg says that, and the formulation of a theory, that's the qualitative part. So formulation of a theory uses an inductive approach. We use, data to build theory. The deductive approach, which is the quantitative, uses theory to understand phenomena, uses theory to understand situations, using theory to generalize the characteristics of what a certain, population. That is the quantitative. So the third one really puts research in these two boundaries, the quantitative aspect and the qualitative aspect. Then we come to the fourth one. It says the Advanced Learners Dictionary of Current English Language lays down the meaning of research as careful investigation or inquiry, especially through a search for new fact. A search for new fact in any branch of what? Knowledge. This is mild on the quantitative, it's mild on the qualitative. It says that whatever you bring out now becomes what? A new what? Fact. It doesn't talk about, the scientific aspect. It said a careful investigation or an inquiry. When you're doing an inquiry, you follow a certain procedure, and it says especially through a search for new facts. And then we go to the fifth one. It says that the term research refers to systematic, you see that word again, systematic method consisting of enunciating the problem, formulating hypotheses, collecting facts or data, analyzing facts, and reaching certain conclusions, either in a form of solution towards, I think it's like what Clifford said. And then we have Redman and Murray, who define research as the movement from known to the unknown. And it is actually a voyage of discovery. This is mind-blowing. Redman and Murray says research is seen as a movement, okay, from known to the unknown. From known to the unknown. And it is actually a voyage of what? Discovery. The voyage of discovery aspect talks now about the qualitative aspect that we are going to discover, because there's no, thing that has been uncovered. So we are going to discover it. But when you come to the first part where it says from the known to the unknown, then it means that there is some framework that we know, but we want to use it to understand a certain perspective in a certain environment. So I just want you to appreciate that from the definition of research, you can lay your tools down and then know which perspective you are looking at. So it could be defined in any sense, but make sure that those keywords, if you want to put all of them together, consider quantitative and qualitative aspect, then you can, we can go for this third approach where we are looking at generalization of what? A finding, and also formulation of a theory. That covers the two, okay? That's just about this. I don't know whether you have any questions on this. Hello?
No, sir.
No.
Any question?
No, sir.
No, sir.
So there's always an objective of research. When we say objective of research, the main targets, why people do research, what do they want to find from the research? What are their milestones in research? The first one is to gain familiarity with a phenomena or to achieve new insight into it. And here you've seen that even when I'm talking about the objective, I'm telling you that these objectives align with what? An exploratory or formulation research what studies. Exploratory is more of a qualitative research. You explore, it means you don't know. That is where you discover. That is where you unearth. So one of the objectives is to gain familiarity. If you gain familiarity, then I'm not familiar with the phenomena. And in most studies, it's more of what? A qualitative what study. Where in your objective, when we're establishing the objective of the research, we did indicate one of the objectives is to what? Understand the barriers and facilitators. It means that their barriers and facilitators have not been theorized. There's no framework that is there. So we just want to understand. And once we use the taxonomy, understand or explore, then it means that we are going into a qualitative, area. of the study. Then we have the two that to portray accurately the characteristics of a particular individual situation or a group characteristics. Then we are moving to what we call the descriptive studies. So descriptive studies describe a certain phenomena. It talks about population characteristics. That type of study talks about the mean, the standard deviation. It tells you the mode, you understand, the skewness, the curtices. It talks about those things. It describes what the population. That's what descriptive studies do. Sometimes descriptive studies can be correlational. After describing, it can talk about relationship. It can talk about like Pearson correlation or Spearman's correlation. That, okay, there's a relationship between Na and Cynthia. That when Na passes exams and then mass exams, Cynthia also passes exams. But there is no causation or causality between the two of them. The passing of the exams of one does not necessarily affect the other, but some way, somehow, there's some sort of correlation in there. So descriptive study can be correlational in terms of its nature. It can be correlational. It can be more of using descriptive statistics like the mean, standard deviation, and all that. But you are describing a certain phenomena. But it's important to note that here that sometimes people do mixed study and then they use descriptive design. And it makes sense because the descriptive aspect might have one part of it as exploration and the other side of it as descriptive. Within the descriptive design itself, it could have, so somebody can say, I'm doing a mixed study, yet my research design is mixed and I'm using descriptive study. So one part can explore and the other part can describe. So descriptive study can use a mixed method. But if you are using the exploratory one, it's purely a qualitative research because you are exploring. Then we come to the third one where we say it will determine the frequency. Now you see, once I'm talking about frequency, I'm talking about figures with which something occurs or with which it is associated with something else. Then we are talking about the diagnostic research. And for instance, the free disposal hall.
Sorry, Dr. Boison.
Yes.
Let me not take you back, but what you said about the descriptive, I want to get it right. We're saying that descriptive study can be qualitative and quantitative. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay.
Can be a mixed study.
Okay.
Right? Can be a mixed study. So there's one part of it that can explore and the other part of it that can describe. Okay.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So then we have the diagnostic research where we say we want to determine the frequency with which something occurs, frequency, the count, and with which it is associated with something else. So that is a diagnostic search for a research study. And when we diagnose, then we can do some sort of hypothesis. We can make some emphatical statement. We can make some claims that A is associated with B or B is associated with A. We can make those claims and then test it. Once we are doing that, we are doing diagnostics. And I made a critical example of your free disposal hall. That is measuring the effectiveness. Okay. Or we can talk about the fact that now is using structural equation model. Okay, it's doing more of. We'll come to that. Hers is the fourth one, but it also falls under the quantitative part. But you are using free disposal hall. We are using some sort of non-parametric, is a kind of non-parametric analysis where you have categorical data, and this data is not even distributed, and then you have heteroscedasticity within the data that you would have to make sure that they are homogeneous. You have that kind of homogeneity of the variances and all that. That is more of what a diagnostic research. So we just want to do an evaluation. We just want to measure the effectiveness. That is a diagnostics research. So if you ask me your research, your fourth objective, that's what you want to do. Okay, but when you come to I mean your fourth objective with your research work, all right, Cynthia. So when we come to now your work, then we are talking about the fourth one. It talks about to test hypothesis. That's the fourth objective of a causal relationship between variables. So here we are saying that the first one, the third one was doing diagnostic research, even though quantitative, but it was not establishing causality. Causality, to establish causality is a big deal because it is not enough or it's not easy to say that the cause of one object is as a result of the other. It takes a lot of, studies and research to establish that causality, because there are other inherent variables that are likely not part of the causal effect that are just around what we call the error term. Okay, those are the variables that the study may not be able to account for, but they are there. So it's not easy to establish causality. So you realize that the fourth objective is actually at the high end of what research. Okay, that is where we test hypothesis of a causal relationship between what variables, and that's the hypothesis or explanatory studies. And that's what now one of your objectives is seeking to achieve. I think, Cynthia, you're using structural equation modeling, and in fact your research design, you guys are doing correlational design, where there is that kind of causality, one one variable affecting the other. Of course, we are measuring the factors affecting employees' behavioral intentions to adopt technology in a value chain system in a manufacturing company. We are evaluating the factors that affect subscribers' behavioral intention to adopt technology in a pension scheme. So behavioral intention to adapt factors that affect, so that factors affecting behavioral intention. So we'll be establishing a relationship between those factors and behavioral intention. We just want to establish that there's a causal relationship between the two. Then it comes to the fourth one, which is the high-end one. Okay, so that is what actually research seeks to achieve. Okay, and I've posited this in the perspective of the design of research. Okay, and then finally, when we come here, where we are talking about the type of research, that is the research design. It's interesting. So it graduates from 1, 2, 3, and that order. Do you get it? There's exploratory or formulation research study is actually, where did I pass? Wow. It's actually the formulation, and then exploratory or formulative research study is actually the preliminary research that we do. Okay, we see that as the first stage. Do you know why? Because if the study has not been done before, if we don't have any evidence of this study being conducted somewhere, then we can talk about exploratory. We are exploring. And it's fundamental because we are going to use some sort of qualitative approach just to discover what is not there. So for instance, if you're coming to, you're going to Dubai, for instance, for the first time, or you're going to US for the first time, if you've not been there before, when you go there, you have to explore. There are things that you don't know, so you'll be asking the question, what is this? What is this? What is this? So exploratory research answers the research question, what? Because we don't know. That's the question we'll be asking. Now, when you come to the second layer, which is descriptive research study, the exploratory study is subsumed into the descriptive study. In other words, if you get to this level, you can explore and you can describe at the same time. That's why I told you that descriptive study can be a mixed study and can be also quantitative only. It cannot be qualitative only. Qualitative only becomes on the exploratory research. So inherent in the descriptive can be some parts that we don't know which we want to study. Okay, and that will bring the qualitative aspect, and then we have the quantitative aspect as well. Okay, then we have also the diagnostic research, which is the third layer, which now is purely what? Quantitative. We are using some sort of tools to kind of evaluate, to kind of investigate some phenomena. But this is based on very serious statistical analysis. Okay, so we diagnose, we find out what caused something. That's the diagnostic research. And then we have the last one, which is the hypothesis or explanatory. So anytime you're doing hypothesis or explanatory, it is the high-end research. And here what we are saying is that you are establishing causality, you are doing serious analysis. Most studies believe that when you do an explanatory research, it means that you've done something very solid, because it is not easy to establish causality and all that. It's not easy to test relationship, hypothesis, and all that, but it's true. Okay, but all the other research methods, it depends on the nature of the data that you want to collect. If I'm getting to an area and I seem not to have so many people around, and I have 2 or 3 people and I want to do a study, common sense should tell me that I cannot do a quantitative study, because quantitative study deals with population characteristics, and it deals with a sample drawn from the population, which I should use to generalize the population. So I cannot use 3 people and say that I use one for the statistics. No, I can't. So purely, you will see that the fact that you are dealing with an issue of small sample size, then you have to go on the qualitative tangent. So it is not someone who conceived that I want to, a researcher should conceive that I want to use this particular method, but it is the data, the preliminary, investigation you do about the study will give you an idea what kind of data is available, and for which reason that would dictate which kind of design you would want to use. Okay, so research design in itself talks about the how the research will be carried. That is the design. How are you going to go about it? And we have talked about this, basic design. We talked about these ones that talks about the objectives and all that. So in real perspective, this is what we have done. You can also talk about the motivation of research. Other people do research to get degree along with its consequential benefits. You are around and people know that you've done a PhD, so you can get some contracts, consultancy work to do and all that. That would be the reason that people do research. Others also have the intellectual joy. And I think that I'm more aligned to this part. And the fact that you have that intellectual joy, that you have tested some hypothesis. We got some paper through today. I'll show it to you. And I'm excited, okay? Myself and my guy Ahmed. We're excited that we're able to, this is a journal, we sent the thing several times, we said it doesn't work, and then we had a breakthrough, okay? So now we understand, and that intellectual joy is there. And also, desire to face a challenge in solving the unresolved problems, that is concern over practical problem, initiate what research. So when there's a problem and you have a solution to that, that is more of an applied research, okay, where there's a problem and then through scientific research, you solve that problem. In most cases, this happens within the business environment where maybe in marketing, they do a survey and find out that, okay, customer satisfaction is coming down. So they sit down, do in-depth research, collect data, do some analysis, and then now they have a solution to the problem. That is also another kind of research. The fourth one is a desire to be of service to society. Sometimes society would want a big man around who we consult, and when we have issues, this guy can use his knowledge to help us. Sometimes we just want to be part of that societal class. So people can be of service of the other. And an example is that if you want to sign your passport to this, then from a PhD holder can do, a public service worker, but a PhD holder can do that easily. When you need a referee and some other things that they requires some sort of support, and they think that those who have a PhD have that honor, they have been put in a kind of a class of respectability and all that. And the fifth one talks about the desire to get respectability. I was just invited recently to chair a function of two programs. One, somewhere somebody's getting married, they say I should become the chairman. Another one, a school is doing an opening day, they want me to be a chairman. And then somewhere, you remember I was called to be the ethic chairman, committee chairman for National Health Insurance Authority. Ghana Institute of Freight Forwarders says I should become the chairman. I think that if I didn't have the PhD, it would have been difficult. But the thing that the research I've done and also the fact that I have the PhD, I mean, that comes with honor. So that respectability is there. So these are things that we may not know when we are getting into this space, but we need to be aware. So it's really a big deal to get the degree, okay? It comes with all these things, and society sees you in a different bracket. The kind of respect and leverage you have, I mean, becomes just amazing. So we talked about types of what research, and I just want to rehash this so that we draw the curtains down. So we talked about the descriptive research where we are looking at characteristics of population, and then looking at the mean, standard deviation, some sort of correlation and all that. But there's that part which of research that is also analytical. And an analytical means that you need critical thinking skills to be part of this research, because you get the data, analyze it to a certain level, and you need that analytical skill to do that. So there's some type of research that is just like that. Most times these are more in the scientific band, where they get some sort of result, and then the person who is the researcher, based on his knowledge that he has acquired, is able to do further in-depth analysis to be able to arrive at a certain conclusion. So we say that is an analytical research. Well, the kind of research we do is not analytical research, where we do more of descriptive, and then we do more of empirical studies, okay, based on facts, based on existing literature. We leverage on that, and then we establish some sort of trend, whether the empirical findings confirm existing literature or it's at variance with existing literature or whatever. So that's what we do. So from the descriptive and analytical, you look at the applied versus the fundamental. The fundamental research is the basic research we do, like the exploratory research that we talked about. That's too fundamental. But applied one talks about what I just talked about in terms of a business solving a critical problem. So applied research really solves what problem. So we apply a certain theory, a certain methodology in a certain environment to solve specific problems. So that's what the most applied research does, and it's more prevalent in the business environment. We have the quantitative versus qualitative, which we know quantitative deals with numbers, and the qualitative deals with perceptions. And quantitative deals with population description and characteristic. Qualitative deals with personal views, and then understanding perspective and all that. So these are the two ways. Whilst quantitative looks at drawing a sample from a population, qualitative look at experiences, lived life experience of other people, experts, and other people that will form the basis of the findings that we just generate. So these are the two sides of the quantitative and the qualitative. I did indicate that qualitative deals with small sample size, quantitative deals with large sample size. Then we have the conceptual versus empirical. I've talked about empirical, but the conceptual means that it's not a study that is verifiable. We are just conceptualizing. We have some ideas, we are putting it together, we want to test and then see whether it makes sense. It's just something from our minds, and then based on maybe existing literature, we just want to establish certain patterns. So when you write conceptual paper and we say it is not empirical, it means that it is not based on evidence. It's the thinking, the views of the researcher. He's trying to position his views in a certain order just to make sense. And there are papers that accept conceptual studies because, see, empirical becomes what it is when conceptual has been tested over time and then we have evidence for it. So conceptual, if some people don't conceive something, it doesn't become empirical. So empirical study, even though it's tested, I mean, along the period, and we are able to see certain trend, it once upon a time, it was what a conceptual, paper or something. Then it becomes what? Empirical. Young businessmen who would want to do business, most times they ask you, where is your concept paper? Where is it? I remember, a day before yesterday, we submitted a paper, a concept paper somewhere, and we didn't win the grant, but they gave it to another group, and they were saying that they need our permission to share our concept paper, even though they didn't give to us. They didn't give it to us, but they thought that the concept paper was good. So I just told the other guys that you should allow them to share anyway. They've read it, so they have it in their mind anyway. If the other jurisdiction, they wouldn't have even contacted you. So we should let them. So when you conceive something, okay, something that you are thinking, you think that is workable, it's a conceptual study. And then what we do is empirical study. Okay, what we are doing now, the studies that we are doing, they are all empirical. The empirical could be quantitative, okay, it could be also qualitative. It could be quantitative, it could be what? Qualitative as well. And because if I'm doing something that is, maybe I'm doing grounded study, grounded theory, okay, I'm using some sort of methodology to establish some sort of findings based on an inductive study, okay? So that's, and then there are other types, longitudinal study that deals with
Dr.
time.
Boison.
Yes.
But conceptual is neither quantitative or qualitative, is that right?
Conceptual can only be qualitative.
It can only be qualitative,
yeah,
okay.
Because the ideas, okay? The ideas that has not been tested, right?
Okay.
Yeah. Then we have some other types. Then, because I said empirical can be qualitative and quantitative. I didn't make mention of conceptual, so I think that's why you were asking. It can only be
yes, sir.
So we have this other types where we have longitudinal or one time. Okay, longitudinal has to do with a length of time. Sometimes those who do this kind of phenomenology study, okay, where they follow phenomena, they are able to, they look at the lived experience of the people and they stay with them, okay? Some of them they call, it's from ethnography. Some of them we call anthropologists. An anthropologist, it could be somebody who is an anthropologist and lives within a society. We have social anthropologists, industrial anthropologists. They stay in industry and they study human beings, their relationship towards work, okay? And they are able to, so they are part of the study, and they can study for 5 years, okay? That's a longitudinal study. That has to do with time. We don't do that at the PhD level. And we have the clinical and diagnostic study. So you see the diagnostic study, those who are at the lab, right? Who, like when you go to the lab, they want to test your blood type and all that. It's more of a diagnostic study, okay? Call it clinical or diagnostic study, and then field setting or laboratory, and then we have the exploratory and what? The formalized one, and then conclusion-oriented or decision-oriented what? Study. Conclusion-oriented means that we are just holding the objective throughout the lifetime of the research, just to make sure that we're able to conclude, we set targets and we are concluding on. These are all types of research, but more importantly, a certain type of research can dovetail into the other types as well. For instance, I can be doing an empirical study, but that empirical study is a descriptive study. You get it? Be an empirical study, but it is a descriptive study, and it's also a quantitative study. Okay, I can do an empirical study. It's what, an exploratory study, and it is what, a qualitative study, because that's the type. So these things can happen as and when, I mean, they are just intertwined. But what you need to understand is that there are two schools of thought: the quantitative and the qualitative. Okay, the quantitative have different opinion as to how knowledge is acquired. That is the positivist. Will come to that, and the qualitative is what the relativist. And we'll deal with paradigm at another time. And just to establish the fact that there are types of research, and it dovetails into the research design. And the research design talks about how the research was carried out. That is very, very important. So we'll revisit this issue about philosophy of science. We'll look at the two body of knowledge, the positivist and then the relativist. And we also look at how, I mean, these philosophers, they evolve, the life of Kant, the life of Auguste Comte, and then my good guy Karl Popper, who developed the theory of falsification and all that. We'll just look at how these things transition and how they inform, you understand, our choice of what? A certain paradigm, our choice of a certain design or approach of research. You should be guided by that, because this two school of knowledge have different perspective, and that should guide us. So you cannot say that you are a relativist and then you are doing a quantitative study. It doesn't work well with that. It just means that you have changed your gender. Okay, you said you are a relativist. You cannot do a quantitative study. If you say you are a positivist, you cannot do, I mean, a qualitative study. Okay, so I mean, these things are very
I really
important.
want to understand that one well.
Okay, you cannot do that, and that is the
so
confusion.
It means that there are some characteristics of what was the word, a realist or what?
Relativist.
Relativist.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so relativists, I mean, they are the qualitative, I mean, guys, and we have a different perspective. Positivists are the quantitative guys. Okay, so yeah, that's just about this part, and we'll reconvene another time and then look at the other one.